Ladies and gentlemen, in life and love, a man must practice wisdom, restraint, and strength. It is often said that transparency is the foundation of trust, yet history and experience teach us that some truths, when revealed carelessly, can weaken bonds rather than strengthen them. Today I want to speak about 4 things a man must always guard within himself when it comes to a relationship. A man's fears are an undeniable part of his existence. Fear is natural, it signals danger, uncertainty, and risk. Yet the way a man deals with his fears defines his character, his relationships, and his overall presence in the world. There is a common belief that true strength lies in complete transparency, in sharing every vulnerability, and in seeking comfort from others. However, experience shows that not all truths should be spoken. Not all struggles should be exposed, and not all fears should be openly displayed. A man must master his fears rather than expose them, not out of dishonesty, but out of wisdom, strength, and the recognition of how fear affects not only himself but those around him. A man who constantly voices his fears, who leans too heavily on others to steady him, unknowingly weakens the perception of his strength. This is not to say that a man must suppress his emotions or deny the existence of fear, but rather he must refine the way he deals with it. A man should not burden a woman, or anyone else, with the weight of his unresolved insecurities. A woman looks to a man for stability, for the sense that he can weather life's storms without crumbling under pressure. When a man exposes his deepest fears too openly, he risks shifting the dynamic of the relationship. He may think he is building intimacy, but in reality he is creating doubt. A woman might sympathize, but she may also, on a deeper level, begin to question whether he is truly capable of leading, protecting, and standing firm when it matters most. Mastering fear does not mean being fearless. It means developing the discipline to control one's emotions and thoughts. Fear can be irrational, fleeting, or driven by past experiences that no longer hold power in the present. A man who gives voice to every fear allows those fears to shape his reality. The mind, once it fixates on fear, can spiral into insecurity, doubt, and hesitation. A man who masters his fears, on the other hand, acknowledges them privately and then works through them without letting them consume him. He learns to stand tall in the face of uncertainty, to make decisions even when he is unsure, and to act with conviction, even when fear whispers doubts into his mind. There is also a social aspect to how fear is perceived. The world does not reward those who are openly uncertain, hesitant, or overwhelmed. Strength is admired, and strength comes from the ability to maintain composure in the face of fear. This does not mean pretending that fear does not exist, but rather channeling it into action. A man who fears failure, for instance, must use that fear to drive himself forward rather than allow it to paralyze him. A man who fears losing someone must not let that fear turn into desperation or neediness, for desperation is the fastest way to lose respect. Instead, he must focus on being the best version of himself, on building his value, and on cultivating the confidence that even in loss, he will stand strong. Furthermore, fear is contagious. When a man voices his fears too openly, those around him begin to absorb his uncertainty. A woman who once felt safe and secure in his presence may begin to wonder if she, too, should be worried. Children who look up to him may start to doubt his ability to lead. Colleagues may hesitate to trust his decisions. Fear, when left unchecked and exposed, spreads like a fire, consuming confidence and stability. A man who masters his fear, however, creates the opposite effect. His presence reassures, his words inspire, and his actions provide certainty, even in uncertain times. The path to mastering fear requires discipline, self-awareness, and resilience. It means developing habits that strengthen the mind and body, whether through physical training, intellectual growth, or emotional control. It means seeking solutions instead of dwelling on problems, taking action instead of freezing in indecision, and maintaining faith in one's own ability to overcome challenges. A man must learn to sit with his fears, to understand them, and to transform them into motivation. He must learn to internalize his struggles without allowing them to dictate his behavior. This mastery of fear also plays a crucial role in relationships. A woman does not want a man who never experiences fear, for that would be inhuman. She wants a man who knows how to face fear without being consumed by it. A man who, even when uncertain, stands tall. A man who can make decisions without allowing anxiety to rule him. A man who can offer reassurance rather than seek it constantly. This does not mean he must isolate himself or bear all burdens alone. Rather, he must choose wisely what he shares and how he shares it. Seeking counsel is different from seeking validation. Discussing challenges with the intent to solve them is different from unloading fears with no direction. Ultimately, a man who masters his fears earns respect, trust, and admiration. His presence commands attention not because he is without struggle, but because he refuses to be controlled by it. He understands that fear is part of the human experience, but he also understands that his role is to rise above it. The world does not favor those who crumble, it favors those who stand unshaken. A man must learn to bear the weight of his own fears, to conquer them in silence, and to emerge stronger than before. A man's ambitions define him. They shape his path, dictate his struggles, and ultimately determine his legacy. The desire to build something great, to reach beyond what is ordinary, is the fire that separates a man from the masses. However, ambition, if mishandled, can be easily diminished. And one of the greatest mistakes a man can make is speaking too soon about his grandest goals. There is an allure to sharing ambitions, to voicing dreams before they have materialized, to seeking validation from others, but this often weakens the very force that drives them. A man must learn to pursue his grand ambitions in silence, letting his actions speak louder than words, allowing his achievements to be the proof of his determination rather than empty promises that fade with time. The moment a man speaks of his ambitions, he invites the opinions of others. Some will doubt him, some will envy him, and others will attempt to steer him in a direction that aligns with their own perceptions. When a man reveals his grand plans prematurely, he risks opening himself up to discouragement and skepticism. Words have power, and once spoken they create expectations. If a man speaks of his ambitions but fails to act with equal intensity, he may find himself trapped in a cycle of talking rather than doing. People quickly grow tired of those who speak grandly but achieve little. Over time, he loses credibility both in the eyes of others and within himself. Silence preserves the purity of ambition. When a man keeps his goals private, he shields them from interference. He is free to think, plan, and execute without the noise of external voices clouding his vision. The world is filled with distractions, and when a man constantly announces his ambitions, he becomes more focused on how others perceive him rather than on the work required to achieve those ambitions. External validation becomes a substitute for actual progress. He may feel as though he has already accomplished something simply because he has received praise or acknowledgement from his plans, even though nothing has yet been built. This illusion of progress can be dangerous, lulling a man into complacency and stripping him of the urgency needed to take real action. There is also an element of unpredictability in pursuing great ambitions. A man's path may shift as he encounters new opportunities, obstacles, and revelations. When he has already spoken publicly about a specific plan, he may feel obligated to stay on that path, even when it no longer serves his best interests. The pressure to remain consistent with his words can prevent him from adapting and evolving. Silence allows flexibility. A man who keeps his ambitions to himself can pivot when necessary without the burden of explaining his every move to those who were once privy to his plans. He remains in control of his direction, unbound by premature declarations that may no longer align with his highest potential. Furthermore, not everyone around a man wants to see him succeed. Some will act supportive, while secretly hoping he fails. Others may actively attempt to sabotage his progress, whether through discouragement, distraction, or direct interference. The more a man shares about his ambitions, the more vulnerable he becomes to these negative forces. Even those with good intentions may unknowingly plant seeds of doubt. A simple remark, "Are you sure that's possible?" or "That sounds too difficult," can take root in the mind, creating hesitation where there once was certainty. By pursuing ambitions in silence, a man protects himself from this unnecessary resistance. He moves forward without the weight of expectation, doubt, or negativity from those who do not understand his vision. The most powerful proof of ambition is success itself. A man who works in silence lets his results speak for him. There is no need for validation when the evidence of his efforts is undeniable. When his work is complete, when his ambitions have materialized, those who once doubted will be forced to acknowledge his accomplishments. At that point, words become unnecessary. The respect he earns comes not from what he said he would do, but from what he has actually done. Those who talk too much about their ambitions before achieving them often find themselves having to explain why they failed to follow through. But the man who remains silent has no such burden. He simply continues to build, undisturbed by the noise of others. Patience is a crucial element in the silent pursuit of ambition. Great things take time, and speaking too soon often reveals impatience. A man must learn to embrace the slow, disciplined process of turning ambition into reality without feeling the need to broadcast every step. In silence, he sharpens his skills, refines his plans, and executes with precision. While others waste energy seeking recognition before they have earned it, he channels all his focus into the work itself. He is not concerned with proving anything to anyone until the results make proof unnecessary. A man's ambitions are sacred. They are the driving force behind his actions, the fuel for his growth, and the foundation of his legacy. To expose them too early is to weaken them. By keeping his ambitions private, a man preserves their strength, avoids unnecessary resistance, and maintains control over his own path. His silence is not secrecy for its own sake, but a strategic decision that allows him to move with clarity, confidence, and purpose. In the end, the world does not remember the promises a man made about what he was going to do. It remembers what he actually did. And the man who masters the art of silent ambition ensures that his legacy is built on action, not words. Discretion is often misunderstood in a world that values radical transparency and constant self-expression. People are encouraged to share everything, to lay bare their thoughts, emotions, and intentions in the name of honesty. Yet, true wisdom teaches that not everything needs to be spoken, and not every truth must be shared in its raw form. Discretion is not dishonesty. It is a refined approach to communication that prioritizes wisdom over impulse, protection over exposure, and long-term stability over fleeting openness. A man who understands the power of discretion is not being deceitful. He is exercising restraint, controlling his narrative, and ensuring that his words serve a purpose rather than create unnecessary conflict, vulnerability, or misunderstanding. Honesty and discretion are not opposing forces but complementary principles. Honesty means being truthful, but discretion means knowing when, how, and to whom the truth should be revealed. A man who practices discretion does not withhold information to deceive, but rather to protect himself, his loved ones, and the integrity of his relationships. There are moments in life when full transparency is beneficial, but there are also moments when revealing too much can cause harm. The ability to distinguish between the two is what separates an impulsive man from a wise one. In personal relationships, discretion is a sign of emotional intelligence. Not every thought, doubt, or insecurity needs to be voiced. A man who speaks recklessly, sharing every worry, fear, or criticism, might believe he is fostering openness, but he is often creating unnecessary tension. A woman does not need to hear every passing thought that crosses a man's mind, especially if those thoughts are fueled by fleeting emotions. If a man constantly vocalizes every uncertainty about the relationship, he risks weakening the foundation of trust. There is a difference between honest communication and reckless exposure. A man who masters discretion knows how to express his emotions in a way that strengthens his connection rather than weakens it. He understands that some words once spoken cannot be taken back, and he chooses them carefully. Discretion also plays a crucial role in a man's ambitions and personal growth. Speaking too openly about future plans can unnecessary opinions, doubts, and interference from others. A man who shares every goal he has before he has begun working on it may find himself facing skepticism, unsolicited advice, or even outright discouragement. There is power in silence, in allowing actions to speak louder than words. Not because there is something to hide, but because a man should be free to build without external pressure or expectations shaping his progress. He is not lying about his ambitions by choosing to keep them private. He is simply preserving their strength until they are ready to be revealed through achievement. In professional settings, discretion is the mark of a trustworthy and competent man. Those who speak too freely about workplace politics, confidential matters, or personal opinions risk damaging their reputation. A man who cannot be trusted to exercise restraint in his words will not be trusted with responsibility. Leaders, mentors, and those in positions of influence understand that withholding certain information is not an act of deception but an act of leadership. Not every truth needs to be broadcasted immediately. Some require careful timing, thoughtful delivery, and an awareness of the impact they will have. A man who practices discretion is not hiding the truth, he is ensuring that the truth is shared in a way that serves a constructive purpose, rather than causing unnecessary harm or chaos. In conflict, discretion prevents unnecessary escalation. A man who speaks out of anger, frustration, or impulse often regrets his words. He may believe he is simply being honest, but raw honesty without restraint is often destructive rather than productive. A man who masters discretion knows when to step back, when to remain silent, and when to choose his words with precision. He does not allow his emotions to dictate his speech, nor does he reveal his every thought simply because he feels the urge to express it. He understands that in many situations, saying less achieves more. Furthermore, discretion is a form of self-respect. A man who shares too much about his personal struggles, past failures, or private life with the people who do not need to know, there is strength in maintaining a sense of mystery, in not making oneself emotionally or mentally vulnerable to those who have not earned the right to such information. A man who speaks carelessly about his personal life, particularly to those outside his closest circle, risks giving others unnecessary power over him. Not everyone who listens has good intentions, and the more a man reveals, the more he exposes himself to potential manipulation, judgment, or betrayal. Discretion is also essential in protecting the dignity of others. Just as a man should be mindful of what he shares about himself, he should be equally mindful of what he shares about those close to him. Speaking carelessly about the flaws, mistakes, or private matters of a partner, friend, or colleague is not an act of honesty, but a betrayal of trust. A man who values discretion knows that loyalty is demonstrated through silence as much as through words. He does not engage in gossip, does not reveal the weaknesses of those he cares about, and does not allow the private struggles of others to become casual conversation. His silence is not deception, it is respect. Ultimately, discretion is a discipline that requires thoughtfulness, self-control, and a deep understanding of human nature. It is the ability to speak when necessary and remain silent when wise. It is knowing that truth is valuable, but its impact depends on how and when it is delivered. A man who embraces discretion does not fear honesty, he respects it enough to use it wisely. He moves through life with a sense of control over his own words, his own narrative, and his own destiny. He does not seek validation through constant expression, nor does he feel the need to prove himself by revealing everything. He understands that the most powerful truths are not always the ones spoken aloud, but the ones carefully guarded until the right moment. Discipline is one of the defining traits of a strong man. It is what separates those who merely wish for success from those who achieve it. Every man faces struggles with discipline, whether it is in controlling his emotions, resisting distractions, maintaining focus on his goals, or overcoming personal vices. These struggles are not unique, nor are they signs of weakness. However, what matters is how a man handles them. His battles with discipline are his own to fight, and they should be faced privately rather than displayed for the world to see. A man who constantly speaks about his struggles with discipline risks diminishing the very strength he seeks to cultivate. His energy should be spent on overcoming challenges, not on seeking validation for facing them. There is a certain nobility in handling personal struggles in silence. When a man openly expresses every difficulty he has in maintaining discipline, he unknowingly weakens his own resolve. Words once spoken shape perception, both his own and that of others. A man who repeatedly announces his struggles with waking up early, staying committed to his fitness routine, or avoiding unhealthy habits is reinforcing in his own mind that he is someone who lacks control. He is creating an identity around struggle rather than around discipline itself. This is dangerous because the more a man identifies with his struggles, the harder it becomes to rise above them. Instead of being a man who is disciplined, he becomes a man who constantly fights to be disciplined. Furthermore, revealing struggles with discipline can change the way others perceive a man. People respect those who demonstrate control, self-mastery, and inner strength. A man who consistently talks about his failures to remain disciplined may think he is being honest, but in reality, he is eroding the respect others have for him. He may find that those who once looked up to him begin to see him as unreliable, inconsistent, or weak-willed. A woman, for example, does not want to hear repeatedly about how her man struggles to stay focused, to control his impulses, or to maintain his habits. She may sympathize at first, but over time she will begin to wonder if he is truly capable of leading, protecting, and providing stability. A leader, whether in a workplace or among friends, does not gain authority by exposing his internal battles. He gains it by demonstrating through action that he has control over himself, even if that control is something he has had to fight for. The process of mastering discipline is an internal one. It requires a man to wrestle with his own mind, to push himself beyond his comforts, and to overcome the resistance that comes from within. These battles are not meant to be shared with the world because they are deeply personal. A man who wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to work on his craft does not need to announce how hard it is for him to get out of bed. He simply does it. A man who fights the urge to waste time on distractions does not need to tell others about how much he struggles. He simply removes the distractions and continues forward. There is a quiet strength in this kind of discipline, a power that comes from acting rather than speaking. The moment a man starts seeking external validation for his struggles, he loses some of his inner power. If he constantly tells others how difficult it is to stay disciplined, he may receive words of encouragement, but that encouragement can become a substitute for real progress. He may feel momentarily better after expressing his difficulties, but the actual work of discipline remains undone. Worse, he may become dependent on others to push him rather than developing the ability to push himself. True discipline is self-generated. It is not driven by external praise or reassurance. It is fueled by an internal commitment to becoming better. Moreover, struggles with discipline should not be public because they are temporary. Every man has moments where he falls short, where he gives in to temptation, or where he fails to meet his own standards. But these moments do not define him unless he allows them to. When a man keeps his struggles private, he gives himself the space to correct his course without external judgment. He can fail, learn, and adjust without the added pressure of others knowing about his missteps. This makes it easier to get back on track because he is not carrying the weight of an audience watching him stumble. A man who keeps his disciplined battles private is free to evolve without the burden of constantly explaining himself to others. Another crucial reason why disciplined struggles should be faced privately is that talking about them can create excuses. When a man tells others that he is struggling with self-control, it can subtly give him permission to continue struggling. It becomes a way to justify lapses in discipline instead of overcoming them. On the other hand, when he keeps his struggles to himself, he forces himself to deal with them directly. He cannot rely on sympathy or encouragement. To keep going, he must rely on his own willpower. This builds real strength, the kind that does not waver when no one is watching. Ultimately, a man's ability to master discipline determines his success in every area of life. But mastery is not achieved through words, it is achieved through action. The men who are truly disciplined, who have full control over their habits, desires, and focus, are not the ones who constantly speak about their struggles. They are the ones who move forward in silence, who conquer their weaknesses without broadcasting them, and who let their discipline be evident in their results rather than in their complaints. A man who treats his struggles with discipline as private battles ensures that he emerges stronger, more capable, and more in control of his own destiny. A man must embody both strength and stability. He must be a fortress unshaken by external forces, resilient in the face of adversity, and unyielding in his principles. At the same time, he must be a foundation, a source of stability for those who rely on him, a provider of security, and a man whose presence brings order rather than chaos. To be only a fortress is to be impenetrable but isolated, detached from the world and disconnected from those who need him. To be only a foundation is to bear the weight of others without the strength to defend what is his. A man must be both, balancing resilience with responsibility, solitude with connection, and power with purpose. As a fortress, a man must be self-reliant. He cannot depend on others to provide him with direction, validation, or strength. The world is unpredictable, and every man will face challenges that test his resolve. There will be times when no one will come to save him, and he must rely only on his own inner role. If he is weak, he will crumble under pressure. If he is too dependent on external support, he will find himself lost when that support is no longer there. A fortress is built to withstand storms, invasions, and threats from the outside. Likewise, a man must be able to endure hardships without allowing them to break him. This does not mean he is emotionless or indifferent, but rather that he is in control of himself. He does not allow fear, doubt, or despair to dictate his actions. He stands firm in his convictions, knowing that his resilience is what keeps him standing when others would fall. But strength alone is not enough. A fortress that stands alone in an empty field serves no greater purpose. A man must also be a foundation, providing stability for those who rely on him. Whether it is his family, his friends, or his community, a man must be someone others can depend on. This does not mean he carries the burdens of others at the expense of his own well-being, but it does mean that his presence brings a sense of security. A man who is a foundation does not waver under pressure. He does not break down when those around him are struggling. Instead, he remains steady, ensuring that the people in his life can trust him to be there when they need him. A weak man cannot be a foundation. If he is easily swayed by emotions, if he lacks discipline, if he is unreliable, then he cannot provide stability to anyone, including himself. To be both fortress and foundation requires balance. A man must be strong but not rigid, dependable but not self-sacrificing. He must know when to stand alone and when to support those around him. There will be times when he must retreat into himself, protecting his energy and guarding his mind from negativity. These are the moments when he fortifies himself, ensuring that no external force can shake him. But there will also be times when he must extend himself outward, providing strength to those who need it. A man who masters this balance understands that his own strength is not just for himself, it is also for those he chooses to protect. There is a misconception that being a fortress means being distant or cold. In reality, a true fortress is a place of protection. A man who is a fortress does not push people away, he ensures that only the right people enter his inner world. He does not allow himself to be exploited, manipulated, or controlled by the weak. He sets boundaries, guarding his mind, his time, and his resources from those who would drain them. This is not selfishness, it is wisdom. If a man allows himself to be weakened by the wrong influences, he will no longer have the strength to be a foundation for those who genuinely need him. At the same time, a man who is a foundation does not allow himself to be used. He is not a doormat, nor does he allow others to place all their burdens upon him without carrying their own weight. He provides stability, but he does not enable weakness. He leads by example, showing others how to be strong rather than simply shouldering their struggles for them. A foundation is only as strong as the structure it supports. If those around a man refuse to take responsibility for themselves, then his role is not to carry them indefinitely, but to encourage them to develop their own resilience. A man who is both fortress and foundation understands that true strength is not just about resistance, but also about endurance. He does not let the world harden him to the point of being incapable of connection, nor does he let his responsibilities weigh him down to the point of breaking. He remains grounded in his principles, steadfast in his discipline, and unshaken by external forces. Those who rely on him do so not because he is invulnerable, but because he has proven that he will not collapse under pressure. He is both protector and provider, both guardian and guide. Every man must cultivate these dual aspects within himself. To be only a fortress is to be untouchable but alone. To be only a foundation is to be supportive but vulnerable. The strongest men are those who have mastered both the ability to stand firm against adversity, while also providing stability for those they choose to care for. They do not seek validation or approval for this role, they simply embrace it because they understand that strength, when properly channeled, is not just about survival, it is about purpose. A man who is both fortress and foundation does not seek recognition for his strength, nor does he demand gratitude for his stability. He stands firm because that is his nature, and he provides support because it is his duty. In a world that constantly shifts, he remains unshaken. He does not crumble under pressure, nor does he retreat when others depend on him. His strength is not for display but for purpose. His presence is not fleeting but enduring. And in mastering this balance, he becomes the kind of man who builds, protects, and leaves behind a legacy of resilience and stability.